Welcome back. A Fox News alert. At least 21 dead and hundreds arrested as the Iranian protests rage on. The Trump administration now calling on the UN to take action.
If the Iranian dictatorship's history is any guide, we can expect more outrageous abuses in the days to come. The UN must speak out. In the days ahead, we will be calling for an emergency session. We must not be silent. The people of Iran are crying out for freedom.
So as the Iranian government continues their efforts to shut down these protests, could President Trump respond by killing the Iran nuclear deal?
Here now to weigh in is retired Green Beret commander and Fox News contributor, Lieutenant Colonel Michael Waltz. Thank you for joining us this morning. So I guess let's start with what do you think this means for the Iran nuclear deal?
Well, the president has about 2 weeks for the next kind of quarterly. Every quarter, he has to basically waive the sanctions that were passed years ago against the Iranian regime. So within the next few weeks, he has to make that decision. And there's some real pros and cons to which way he should go here. On the one hand, he absolutely is right to back these protesters who are fighting back against a dictator, theocratic regime, and how can he continue to allow funds to flow to such a regime that's oppressing its own people, that's supporting terrorism, and that is a bad actor across the Middle East. On the other hand, he has to be very careful about playing into the hands of the regime and its propaganda and shifting the spotlight back to the United States and turning this into a nationalist issue that it's standing up against the United States. That's why Ambassador Haley also, during her press briefing, read the anti-government, a number of statements from the anti-government protesters and said, these are their words, not the United States' words, and sent a message to the regime to not try to send this back to us. So we're walking a very fine line here.
Well, you know, and that's what I was kind of curious about. You know this deal pretty well. It's kind of a question of, you know, from my understanding was that Iran got a lot of the benefits of this deal up front. And maybe I'm wrong here, but does it make sense to get rid of the deal now when we're kind of getting our end of it by trying to at least keep an eye on what they're doing, and they've already kind of seen a lot of money from this deal?
Don't get me wrong. I think this deal was one of the worst diplomatic agreements in modern American history that the Obama administration entered into. Now it's just how do we maneuver ourselves to get out of it? How do we support these protests and protestors and these anti-government demonstrators without playing into the hands of the Iranian regime? That's the trick here. I think one possible solution is supporting senators and a number of legislators that are working on legislation that are very tough on the regime, like Senator Tom Cotton, who wants to pass additional sanctions for not only the human rights abuses, for Iran's support to terrorism, but also its growing missile regime that are outside of the deal. And that would leave the president with some top cover, but also continue to hit the regime in its pocketbook, which is what these protests are really about.
A lot of people have been comparing the protests that we're seeing right now to the protests back in 2009 because they were pretty significant. In your opinion, how is this different? Are these worse?
Well, these are different in two key ways. One, they're widespread out all over the country, whereas in 2009 they were mainly focused in Tehran. And two, these are protests against the brutal kind of political, it's really protests against the regime and protests against the economic policies against the regime, whereas in 2009 they were protests against against politics and against the election, president, against the election of Ahmadinejad, exactly. So those are two important differences. I am more encouraged about these protests than I am in 2009.
Okay. All
right. Well, we'll see. Another situation to keep an eye on. The ever complicated world we have right now. Lieutenant Colonel, thank you.
Complicated, but I'm all for the president standing up for these folks very publicly.
All right, sir. Thank you so much.